It's a real privilege to be here today, and I'm not sure, is that, how's the sound doing with the video? You like, it's good. We'll tilt it up a little bit. Tilt it a little, oh, okay. Good. You got to be just perfect. By the way, I just think you guys look fantastic today. It's unbelievable. They made you dress like this with your beautiful dresses and suits and ties. You're looking really professional and dapper. Yes. Is this a class requirement, a course requirement? Are you taking this? Yeah, that's why you're here to, you're not here to listen to me. You have to be here because you had to come to fill a course requirement. Is that true in all cases, or? Half and half. Half and half, okay. Love your pink shirt, by the way, back here. That's, you're making a statement there, dude. It makes me pop. Yes. Bam. I like that. Makes him pop. And that is one principle of networking your way to the top, by the way. When you go to an event, wear something that will cause you to stand out. Because I will remember that guy 2 weeks from now, whereas I might not remember someone who wore just your basic black, whatever. But what's your name? Bryce. Bryce, and where are you from? Murray. Murray, Utah. Okay, Bryce, great to have you here. Well, we'll have some fun. I'm going to go, what's the typical mode here in terms of the lecture? Do you want me to go 35, 40 minutes until 20 of, quarter of, and then take Q&A, or?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, does that works well? Okay, well, we'll plan to do that. I got lots of material that we can cover. But the title of today's talk is How to Create a Billion-Dollar Company. Who here would like to create a billion-dollar company? Oh, yeah. Yeah, let's do it. It can be done, and it can be done very rapidly. In fact, would you stand up for a minute, young lady, and turn so they can see you? Right, Brittany, right, this is Brittany. She has a pair of really cool glasses. Now, what, you can sit down now. When I met Brittany, I said to her, oh, well, his name's Parker. So I says, well, those glasses must be Warby Parker. If you've, how many people have Warby Parker glasses? You're familiar with them, etc. Yeah, there you go, familiar. That company started in about 2010, and it's a billion-dollar company today. A billion-dollar company. How did they do it? They found a breakthrough value proposition. We're going to go through the 4 ingredients to creating a billion-dollar company today. And one of them, the first one I talk about, is a breakthrough value proposition. Not something that's just interesting, something that's truly breakthrough, and something that you can explain in a very few words, crisply and understandably. Warby Parker, for example, went into the market for eyeglassware. There's one company, Luxottica, in Italy that owns 80% of the world market of eyeglasses. It's this massive thing. But they can't move as quickly and fast as a young company like Warby Parker. So 4 MBAs came out of Wharton Business School and said, hey, we can disrupt the eyeglass industry. By the way, when you get a pair of Warby Parker glasses, you're able to go online, try on 5 or 10 pair online in an avatar format, see what looks really good on you, then have them send you the glasses. All you need is your little prescription from the optometrist. They send you the glasses. You try the ones on in the comfort of your home that you like best, and then you keep the ones that you like. That's a pretty cool idea, right? But it's not complicated. It's not complex. 4 or 5 years later, it's a billion-dollar corporation. So find a breakthrough value proposition. That's the first and foremost thing. I was associated with a company, mentioned Fusion.io, rated by Business Week magazine as the most innovative company in the entire world. It's a little Salt Lake City-based company that was established in 2006. I came along in 2008, and guess what the revenue of the company was in 2008, mid-2008? You wouldn't know. It was 0, right? Not very good. Why would I want to get involved with a company that had zero revenues? Well, the fact is, I saw the breakthrough value proposition that they had advanced. And the breakthrough value proposition for them that no one else had figured out until David Flynn came along and invented this great technology. Their breakthrough value proposition was solid-state memory devices for corporate data centers. So think of the largest corporations on planet Earth, JP Morgan Chase, Walmart, et cetera, they have massive data centers with tens of thousands of programmers and so forth running their information technology systems. Well, if you could find a way to accelerate data flows, information, videos, et cetera, the stuff that runs over your internet within your company, if you can find a way to accelerate that to incredible speeds that were previously unheard of, 100x, for example, that would be something that would be useful. And so David Flynn found a way. Now, how many people have, let's see, who has a computer here? Your laptop? What do you got here? Does this have a hard drive or solid state?
Great question.
Oh my gosh. That thing's feeling pretty hard. Yeah. Here, now this is a good one. This has got a solid state memory device in it. Congratulations. So it runs faster. And by the way, because it's solid state, there are no moving parts. It's not an old hard drive where things are moving, et cetera, where you need a fan to come on and cool it down, et cetera. Time to step it up.
Oh, yeah.
Tell your parents, have them film it. What's your name?
Dylan.
Dylan? Dylan, where are you from?
South Jordan.
South Jordan, okay. I have an office up there at Hireview. We'll talk about that in a few moments. But, your parents, yeah, they need to step it up and get him a solid state computer so he'll be more efficient in his schoolwork and get straight A's and get a scholarship and end up and get a doctor. Become a doctor.
I don't get straight A's right now.
Oh, bam! He's already getting straight A's. Well, the solid-state memory device would help you. But see, it's an interesting thing. Solid state, it's just like a jump drive or flash drive. You're all familiar with those sorts of things, right? You put a jump drive in. Those are made of NAND flash chips manufactured by IM Flash at the point of the mountain, or Samsung in Korea, or Micron in Boise, Idaho. They make NAND flash, it's called, little chips. It's an interesting fact, when you read and write off that memory device millions of times a day, those chips will actually degrade in terms of their quality, and errors will begin to erupt. Now, in your solid state device there, who manufactures your machine there?
It's Asus.
Asus, okay. So as Asus manufactures that machine, you're not going to read and write off your solid state memory device tens of millions of times a day, but in a corporate data center, you do. And so you need NAND flash memory chips that will withstand all of the reading and writing that goes on and off of those chips. And so David Flynn invented a way to cause those memory chips to self-correct and not degrade over time. That was the breakthrough value proposition of Fusion I/O. So it was great. It's a great thing to have a breakthrough value proposition, but you also have to do some other things. And the second thing that I would tell you about is to find marquee customers, marquee accounts, marquee partnerships. I can remember the day when I became CEO of Fusion I/O, and about 6 months thereafter, in walked Jim Dawson, my new Senior Vice President of Global Sales, and we had a company meeting. At the time, there was only like 50 people in the company. But he walked in, and he had a jacket on, cool-looking jacket, reached up his sleeve. You know how you pull a rabbit out of your hat or sleeve or whatever, or bird. So he reaches up his sleeve, and he pulls this out. It's a piece of paper. Pulls it up and shows everybody. It's a $4 million order from Facebook, right? our first big deal that we ever got at Fusion IO, because we'd gone into Facebook and convinced them that when Yvonne, who's going to become my new Facebook friend later today with the beautiful hat sitting in the back, she's from Taiwan, speaks fluent Mandarin, also really good English. Yvonne is going to become my Facebook friend. And when Yvonne posts something, a video, for example, to her Facebook feed, I'll go out and I want to click on that. Now, I don't want to wait to see a spinning ball and wait and wait and wait. And yet, think of all of the videos and all the photographs and all the memory that's taken up at the Facebook corporate data center, because when she uploads her Facebook video and Brittany uploads her and Parker uploads his, etc., there's a bunch of data that's sitting resident. And we want to get that out. I want to see Parker, when he orders those Warby Parker glasses, I want to see him post a notification to the world. I got these really cool glasses today. You should buy your stuff from Warby Parker. Okay, and here's a video from the Warby Parker founders. Okay, pull up that video. I don't want it to spin. And the reason it doesn't spin is because it's got Fusion IO solid-state memory devices sitting in their corporate data center. And so for us, that was a monumental accomplishment in terms of acquiring a marquee account. Once we had Facebook, we were able to walk into MySpace at the time. That's yesterday's news. In fact, I walked into MySpace with my Chief Technology Officer, Steve Wozniak. Who's heard of Steve Wozniak? Who's Steve Wozniak?
He's the co-founder of Apple.
Right. See this old computer? Signed by the Woz. Okay. Well, Woz worked for me for this little Salt Lake City-based company, Fusion IO. And we walked into MySpace.com, and they were still doing okay in 2008, 2009. And we sold them a bunch of flash-based memory devices based on the fact that we'd acquired this order from Facebook. So then we were able to go to JP Morgan Chase, et cetera, and acquire these major accounts because we'd achieved this one thing. So as you start your company, as you're building it up, think about who would be a great customer for our product. Someone who would advertise it, et cetera, in a game-changing sort of way. Let me ask you a question. Who in this room has heard of Bill Gates? Okay, great. Essentially 100% of you. How many people in this room have heard of Gary Kildall? You could do a quick Google search on it. In fact, you have such pretty hair. Wow. Yes, I'm pointing at your curly blonde hair. Can you do a quick Google search on Gary Kildall? Are you online?
Yeah.
K-I-L-D-A-L-L. Sorry to pick on you. Gary Kildall, K-I-L-D-A-L-L. Gary Kildall is the man who should have been Bill Gates. Gary Kildall.
It's the guy that invented a lot of this stuff, and then Bill Gates sent IBM to them to get their big contract. And then he's like, no, I don't like it. And so Bill Gates is like, done, I got it.
I'll tell you the full story, but that's very good. What's your name?
Brian.
Brian.
Yeah.
Where are you from?
I'm from Linden.
Linden? Okay. Good. What do your parents do? Are they in tech or?
No, my father's kind of in software.
Uh-huh. Boy, but that's impressive that he would even know that. Gary Kildall in 1977 was at the Naval Research Laboratories in Monterey, California. And he found a way to build the world's first personal computer operating system. So these PCs that we have out now, you're able to type on the keyboard and see something on your keyboard. That is triggered or engineered by an operating system, a personal computer operating system. Gary Kildall invented that in 1977. In 1981, IBM decided, from 77 to 81, personal computers were a matter of hobbyists. And they weren't really used in business. But IBM in 1981 decided that they're going to come out with a business personal computer. And so they're creating the hardware out there in Boca Raton, Florida. They're building these personal computers. And as they're doing so, they realize, oh, heck, We need an operating system. We need to find a way to type on our keyboard, have it show up on the computer screen. We need an operating system. They looked around at each other and everybody said, Gary Kildall. Gary Kildall's our man. Okay, so that's great. So Kildall lived in Monterey with his wife Dorothy, and they started a company called Digital Research Corporation, DRI for short, Digital Research Inc. And they had a product called DR-DOS, which stood for Digital Research Disk Operating System. And so they go and they agree to meet with IBM, but guess who doesn't show up for the first half of the meeting? Gary Kildall. Gary Kildall's a little bit arrogant. I know this is being taped, but I also know that he had a few demons in terms of drinking and some other things in his personal life. He was a bit of a shy man. And so he wasn't there at the first part of that meeting. And it kind of disrespected the IBM folks. The IBM folks met with Dorothy for a while, his wife. They had their lawyer there, Jerry Davis, who was a copyrights lawyer. They got into a dispute, didn't go well. Kildall comes back into the meeting, at least according to Gary. Now, if you look up online, there'll be a big story out there about how Gary Kildall blew off IBM and never showed up at the meeting. I've talked to Gary Kildall about that. Gary said he was at the meeting. Nevertheless, whatever the truth is, the IBM executives flew back to Boca Raton, Florida, and they said, we will never do business with that man. We will never do business with that man. So now IBM was left without an operating system for this new personal computer that they're getting ready to introduce to the market. It's a big deal, time's going by, etc. Bill Gates comes along, Harvard dropout. He and Paul Allen, buddies, started Microsoft. It's down in New Mexico at the time. Bill explained to his mother, I don't know the exact conversation that took place, that he needed an operating system. And that IBM needed an operating system. And his mother said, oh, I know someone that works at IBM. She was on a school board in Seattle, Washington, where Bill grew up. And so she hooked Bill up to the folks at IBM. Then Gates goes back to Redmond, Washington, and finds a company called Seattle Computing Products. And Seattle Computing Products had taken Gary Kildall's original DOS, rewritten a couple of lines of code, and renamed it QDOS for Quick and Dirty Operating System. Gates walks in and says, $50,000. You want $50,000? Great. Seattle Computing Products was ecstatic. They hadn't even written the code. Someone's going to give them $50,000. Gives them $50,000, buys QDOS for Quick and Dirty Operating Systems, runs back to Albuquerque, New Mexico, wherever their headquarters were at the time, and relabels it MS-DOS, goes back to Boca Raton, Florida, meets with IBM, and shortly thereafter signs the most important contract, I would say, in the history of the world. The most important contract in the history of the world. Think about that. Because it made Bill Gates the richest man in the history of the world, right? And the contract, said that IBM would then incorporate into their personal computer MS-DOS. So for Bill Gates, having marquee customers was absolutely essential. He understood the value of that, and he did everything he possibly could. He didn't invent the personal computer operating system. He didn't write Windows. Gates has essentially invented nothing in his life. He's a brilliant technologist, to be sure, much more so than I ever was or ever thought about being. But having said that, it was relationships that made it happen for him. And he went and found the relationships, signed IBM to the largest contract in the history of the world. Oh, postscript. You like PSs? This is a sad PS. And there's a whole story to this, and I just freaking need to write the book about it. But this whole saga starts in 1981. It continues into the early 90s, and now I'm Senior Vice President and Chief Legal Counsel for Novell. We buy Kildall's company, so I get to know Gary Kildall quite well. We rename our operating system Novell DOS, and we go into competition with Microsoft against their MS-DOS, Novell DOS. They beat us, and they beat us badly, not because they had a superior product. In fact, Michael Dell said that we had 2 features and functionalities that weren't even in MS-DOS. But Gates was very clever, and he signed Dell and IBM and all these other hardware manufacturers to a contract that later was found to be in restraint of trade. It violated the antitrust provisions of the US government. And it said essentially that for every machine that Dell manufactured, or Asus, do you have a Dell there?
Dell, yeah.
Oh man, Dylan, you're killing me right now. You got a Dell with a Microsoft operating system, no solid state memory devices. Folks, help this man. Anyway, it's fine. So, but Michael, we went to Michael. We said we had a better, he said, yes, you have a better product. Novell has a better operating system than Microsoft. He says, but I can't buy Novell's product. We said, why? He says, because I signed a contract with Bill Gates and Microsoft that says for every machine that I build at the Dell factory, I have to pre-bundle Microsoft's operating system. And so that blocked Novell from driving into that market. So I eventually sued Microsoft on behalf of Novell. We won, but it was too little, too late, and so forth. The sad part about that, okay, so this is the postscript that I was going to tell you about. So Kildall comes aboard the Novell family for a period of time. We give him an executive vice president title for a period of time. But he's off flying his planes, he's off doing different things. And in 1994, when we got our initial victory over Microsoft in federal court, 2 months thereafter, Gary Kildall found himself drinking with his tech buddies in the Monterey Bar and Grill in Monterey, California. A group of bikers drives up, Harley Davidson, you know, that sort of thing. They come driving up. They go into the bar. A fight breaks out. Moments later, Gary Kildall is found dead on the floor of the Monterey Bar and Grill. The man who should have been the richest man in the history of the world. He died. Actually, they found him unconscious. He lived for 3 days in a hospital in Monterey, California. It's kind of a sad story. But that, folks, illustrates another point. That's not necessarily one of my 4 points. But never do anything in your personal or professional life that is going to cause you to regret something. It cause you to look back and damage your reputation. Reputations in today's online world of social media can be destroyed in a nanosecond. I just played a wonderful golf tournament in the TPC Sawgrass in Jacksonville, Florida. And the president of the PGA of America last year said some snide remark about Ian Poulter, who actually had a pretty good tournament this weekend, one of the better golfers from Europe. Within seconds, that went out over social media, and he lost his job within 4 hours. Never say anything in Twitter or Facebook. Folks, let me tell you something. As an employer, you know what the first thing I do when someone applies for a job? I don't look at a resume. Resumes are dead. Resumes are dead. Let me repeat that. Resumes are dead. You kind of have to do them, but your Facebook page, your LinkedIn profile, your Twitter, your tweets, that's your profile to the world. That's your resume to the world. So if those aren't up to snuff, those aren't really representative of who you are or what you want to be, Get those fixed up and make them look great. Okay, but I digress. Marquee customers, marquee accounts. Any questions? Feel free to raise your hands, comments. The third thing that you need to build a great company is people. Not just people, but people that have passion. When I start companies, I want people that I'm associating with in those companies to be thinking about those things 24/7 like I do. I got up this morning at 5:45, and after going to bed at 2:30 this morning here in Provo, I pound out some emails to secure a trademark for my wife's company. It's called Fluent World. My wife's company is so freaking awesome right now. Imagine yourself as a 3D avatar going into a video game and wanting to learn to speak French and walking through the virtual streets of Paris and interacting with the boulangerie or some other French establishment, etc. Now, it's not live. We've instantiated a series of NPCs or non-player characters in the virtual worlds. And so that you can walk up to those NPCs, a navigation mesh is triggered, and they begin speaking to you in your foreign language. And you need to select the right responses, et cetera, et cetera. It's kind of a game-changing way of learning a foreign language. We believe we're going to disrupt Rosetta Stone, we're going to disrupt Busuu.com, Duolingo.com, and any other .com out there that's advancing language learning. This is a much more immersive way to learn a foreign language. So that's my wife's company, and I wake up every morning excited about it. She's a PhD in instructional technology from BYU, and we actually built for the Missionary Training Center of the LDS Church a functionality where if you get a call as an LDS missionary, you're able to go into your 3D virtual world and walk through the virtual streets of Mexico, learning to speak Spanish, etc. This is pretty cool stuff. So, but I'm passionate about it. I'm excited about it. And when I'm excited about something, I'm all over it. My wife's all over it. She was on a conference call 7 hours today, building this thing out. If you're running a company and you find yourself dissatisfied with some of your employees, I will tell you now that you will want to make a decision to let those people go and do something else sooner rather than later. I can't think of a time in my 35 plus years in business where I regretted firing somebody too soon. It's usually we want to be nice, we want to give them a chance, et cetera, et cetera. No, you have to have the right people on the bus, as Jim Collins writes. You've got to have the right people on the bus driving down the freeway to make this thing happen. And they've got to be exciting, and they've got to have passion. I hire people with passion before I hire people with expertise. To me, people with passion or a can-do attitude, a real positive attitude. I like Yvonne. She came up to me earlier today. She introduced herself. She's a positive person. You can sense she's a can-do person. Attitude determines altitude in life. Attitude determines altitude. And so I'm always looking around to surround myself with people that have the right attitude. Positive people. It makes a huge difference. Now, it doesn't hurt to have people with expertise. And I will say to you that when I have gone to Silicon Valley to raise money over the years, I'm kind of the person that is the energetic, leader, positive personality. But I'm always accompanied by David Flynn. David Flynn is an absolute genius when it comes to technology. At Fusion.io, he made all the difference. He couldn't have done it without me, and I couldn't have done it without him in any kind of a way. So you need people with passion, smarts, and expertise as you build your company out. Many, many examples of that. Steve Wozniak, when we got him to join Fusion.io, That was a major coup. Can someone help her open those? You're good. It's not bothering me at all. It's like I'm standing over my last 20-foot putt, and we've got to make the putt to win the tournament. Anyway, Mary Robinson is here. If you don't know Mary, Mary runs the world here at UVU. It's been a dear friend of mine since 1975. Her husband and I were best friends, best buddies in law school, and we certainly played a lot of golf together. Her husband's a very prominent local attorney. So thanks for coming, Mary. Okay, people with passion and expertise. You need both of those things. I was going to mention Steve Wozniak. I went to an event, and you need to get my book, 6 Timeless Principles for Networking Your Way to the Top. And you will be able, and you can find it out on Amazon, etc., but it tells the whole Steve Wozniak story. Takes up most of one chapter. But it starts with this principle: doing something for somebody else. The word networking is not a 4-letter word. Connecting and forming business relationships means everything. I read a study some years ago, I think it was Carnegie Mellon or something like that. They did a study of successful people in the world. And they found an interesting thing. 80% of what will make you successful are your relationships. It's not your core individual skill set or expertise. So that's important, and it's essential. And I advise everybody in this room to get some classes in programming or tech or information systems. Because when I'm confronted by 2 similarly situated lawyers that come to me and ask for a job, or 2 similarly situated accountants, if one of those accountants has had a couple of years of programming or something like that, boy, they really, it's a world of information technology today. So if you're not taking classes in that area, I advise you heavily to take 1 or 2, even if it's not your major. Wozniak, I keep wanting to tell the Wozniak story. July 18th, 2008, I found myself in Sun Valley, Idaho. I was asked to speak at the annual meeting of the Utah Bar Association. Odd that they would have it in Idaho, but that's what they like to do. They like to get out of the state, you know, that sort of thing. So a guy asked me to come. Well, first of all, it starts with Dr. Tom Judd. Dr. Judd delivered my 14th grandchild. I went to that baby birth. Tom Judd came out of the birth. He said, "David, can I talk to you about something?" I said, "Sure. Have you had breakfast?" "No." "Let's go have some breakfast." So we went to the Orem Community Hospital. This is going to all lead back to Steve Wozniak. I said, "Sure." So we go, we have breakfast, etc. He says, "You know, Dave, I have a son-in-law that's moving to the state of Utah. Would you do me a favor and go to lunch with him?" And he says, "Well, what's his name?" He says, "Brian Lebrecht." And I said, "Well, where is he now?" He says, "In Southern California, but he's going to be up here. He's going to be moving to the state, and he needs to establish a clientele up here. Would you mind going to lunch with him and talking about how you've developed clientele over the years?" I said, "Sure, Dr. Judd, you know, happy to do it." Go to lunch with Brian about 3 months later. Have a nice lunch. About 6 months later, Brian calls me up and says, "Hey, David, thanks for all your tips and advice on connecting with people. I took your advice. I joined the Utah Bar Association, and I became the head of the Speakers Bureau." It's great. Congratulations, Brian. Gives you good exposure, etc. He then said, "Will you come speak at our annual convention?" So now it's all coming together, right? Dr. Judd to Brian to Sun Valley, July 18th, 2008. I'm in Sun Valley, Idaho. I give my speech. Now I'm walking out, and I have an 11 a.m. tee time at a great golf course in Sun Valley, Idaho, because I love to play golf. Mary, do I love to play golf? Yes, she can verify that. I've taken her husband, Mark, away from Mary far too many times over the years. But, so now I'm getting ready to go to my 11:10 a.m. tee time at the Sun Valley Golf Course, world-class golf course up there. And it's a beautiful summer day, etc. I'm looking forward to it. I've driven all the way up there, looking forward to some golf. Now I'm walking out. I look down and I see a little white sheet of paper. Oh man, what's this? I pick it up off a piano bench and it says, keynote, luncheon speaker, Steve Wozniak, inventor of the Apple computer. Now, I have a conundrum because I love golf and I want to go play. But if I go play, I'm not going to hear Woz speak. And so, you know, in life, it's the little things that can make all the difference. And that day, I actually made the right decision. I said, I'm going to bag golf. I'm going to go Woz's speech. But here's what I did. And you've got lovely brown hair. And I met Julie, and she had nice brown hair like yours, and I put my hand out and I says, hi, I'm David.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth.
Elizabeth, okay. You're not Julie, but anyway. So she said, my name's Julie Roebuck. Now we were sitting in the front row of this event where Woz is getting ready to speak, and I said, Julie, what do you do for a living? And she says, oh, I'm Steve Wozniak's executive assistant. Now, there's like 500 or 1,000 people in this room. But if you show up enough in life, great things can happen. But you got to be there for things to happen, right? And so I showed up, shook her hand, got to meet Julie. She says, well, what do you do for a living, Mr. Bradford? And I told her a little bit about my background in technology. And she says, oh, Steve doesn't know anybody in this area that loves technology. Would you mind staying after and speaking to Mr. Wozniak? Oh yeah, I guess I could arrange that. So I stayed. She brought me up to the podium. She says, Mr. Wozniak, this is David Bradford. He was with Novell, da-da-da-da-da. Oh, I love Novell. It was a great company. And so we hit it off and we talked about it. That night I sent him an email inviting him to join the Fusion.io advisory board. He agreed. A few months later, I was CEO of the company and invited him to be our chief scientist. So you surround yourself with people with expertise and passion, and it really helps drive your companies forward. By the way, here's the last point. You need money, right? As much as you'd like to be able to just do it yourself, you need money. Now, sometimes you can raise a friends and family round of financing, right? Your dad, your mom, they've got $50,000. They can seed your company. It's kind of a, you know, a friends and families round. Then, once you get the company up and running, now you're looking for a seed stage round. You're looking for one, maybe institutional investor that'll come in and write a check for, say, $500,000 to help you move your company along. So that would be a seed stage investment. That's followed by a Series A investment, Series B, Series C, possibly by venture capital funds. And we have many great ones here in the state of Utah. There are many great ones in the Silicon Valley. Do you realize that in the Silicon Valley, I think 90% of all venture capital financing in the world comes about a 1-mile strip on Sand Hill Road in Silicon Valley, actually Menlo Park, California. It's called Sand Hill Road or Silicon Valley. Anyway, that's where you can get capital, right? And so when you start thinking about building your company, et cetera. Now, it would be ideal. Who has an idea for a company here? Let's test that out. Yes, mustard sweater. That's the best I can come up with.
I'm starting a company right now with a few friends.
Good. Yeah, what's the general concept?
The idea is you buy a bag, you lift a burden. It's kind of like a Tom's Shoe Foundation. Like you buy a pair of shoes and you help out someone in need.
Right.
So it's the same thing with a bag, but going to a good cause from within the community.
And what's it called?
Lift.
Lift and bag. Bag and lift.
Like you buy a bag, you lift a burden.
Right. That's good. That's good. Buy a bag, lift a burden. Warby Parker, by the way, now a billion-dollar company, look up what they did. They have donated a pair of glasses to somewhere in the world for everybody, for one pair that gets purchased. By the way, their frames are only $99. Every pair, every frame, $99. Right? So it's a good deal, too. But that's a great idea. Okay. Now, how are you going to fund that? Are you going to create a website? Is this going to be an app?
Yeah, so we're starting off by, we're buying our bags from China.
Okay.
And importing them here, and we're selling them here with our logo on it. And each bag is going to have a picture of somebody in need and their story, and how purchasing that bag will go directly to that person.
Wow. Have you looked up what Kiva's doing?
No.
Kiva. Look up what Kiva's doing. Kiva's a wonderful micro-lending organization, all done online. But what's cool about that is kind of what you're resonating with there. Maybe some of your other partners got the idea, but I can lend money through kiva.org, I guess it is. And let's say I donate $500 to their organization. That money eventually gets paid back by that farmer or that, you know, single mother that has 6 kids and has to walk 8 miles to work. There's a story associated with everyone on kiva.org. And it becomes compelling. And when you see that you can lend them money and that money gets repaid, and then when it gets repaid, you get a notification, and then you can repurpose that money to donate to other organizations. And so that's a terrific idea. Now, how are you going to finance all of those bags that you're manufacturing in China?
Well, right now we just launched our website, and right now we're putting up a canvas model first for our business plan, because it's not legitimately official. We're doing some legal Zoom stuff to get our logo approved and
Sure.
the company. So we're just in the beginning stages.
Yeah. No, but at some point when you make that first order, in fact, you should look up another Utah story that is in the furniture business. How many people have sat in a love sack? Everybody loves a love sack, right? I hope all you did was sit in the love sack. Sorry, I didn't say that. Sean Nelson, AKA Shawnee, is from Utah, and he invented love sack. Now CEO, they have 70 companies or 70 outlets. They're based in New York / Connecticut, etc. But he was going to a conference. He'll tell you this story. If you go out, it's actually online. There's a video that talks about his 5 tips for building a company. And one of them, he says, you know, believe that the money will somehow come. Operate as if the money will be there. I think that's essentially his tip. And so he gets this order for, I don't want to say 60,000. He needed $250,000 to have his stuff manufactured in China. And he gets the order. He doesn't have the money to have the love sacks manufactured. Just like if I wanted to order 200 of your sacks right now, have them manufactured in China, where would you get the money to have them manufactured? Okay, so anyway, you got to find the capital. But if you get that order in hand, you can take that to a bank, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, bottom line is you're going to need capital to advance your company. Many people would like to keep 100% ownership of their company. To me, that's backward thinking. You want to have shareholders come in, share the risk with you, and share the reward. And in order to grow quickly, sometimes you have to give up equity in your company. So how many partners do you have? There's 4 of you, so we'll just say you each own 25% of the company right now. Now you need to grow. You want to grow fast because someone else is going to come up with that same idea. You got to get into the market, get it fast, get it done quickly, et cetera, et cetera. So you need capital. Don't say, oh, if we go out and get $1 million, you know, we're going to have to give up, you know, 5% each or 10% each of the company. You'd much rather, here's the lesson, and write this one down, you'd much rather have a small piece of a very large pie than a very large piece of nothing. Okay? So remember that. Capital is essential to build in this market quickly. Ideas today, another famous Utahn, a guy named Nolan Bushnell once said, everybody has had the experience of getting up in the morning, being in the shower, and having a fantastic idea. It's the person that gets out of the shower, towels off, and executes on that idea that wins in life. Love the fact that you're executing your idea. Keep it up. Send me an email, connect with me on LinkedIn. Let me know in 6 months where you're at with your bag company. I'd love to track that. I want to invite all of you to go out and send me an invitation to connect with me on LinkedIn. It's today's professional network. You need to be out there. You need to have a great profile. Future employers will be looking at your LinkedIn profile. How many people are you connected to? How many endorsements do you have? How many recommendations do you have? That's your resume in today's world. So feel free to send me a LinkedIn request. Follow me on Twitter at davidbradford.com. Would love to have you send me a personalized Twitter note. That's the last thing. I want to make this point, and I've made it a couple of times today in several ways, that every business transaction has its basis in a personal relationship. Remember the Bill Gates story? Who had the relationship with IBM? His mom. Isn't that crazy? He might not have ever gotten that deal but for his mom being on a school board with some executive from IBM, etc. So it starts so often with a personal relationship and building a company. How did I end up being at Fusion.io as CEO? Well, there was a fellow by the name of Don. He moved to Utah in 2002. And Don called me up one day and says, I understand you're the human internet. You're the person I need to know in the state of Utah to connect to sources of venture capital. I'd love you to take you to lunch. Well, tell me a little bit more about your background, Don. We got to know each other on the phone, went to lunch. I then, a couple of weeks later, took him out to 3 venture capital funds and introduced him to them. He was very appreciative at that time. It was 2002. Guess what? I didn't hear from Don for 6 more years. And that was fine. I didn't care. Don calls me in early 2008 and goes, Dave, I found this great company in Salt Lake. It's called Fusion.io. So you never know the relationships that you form today, the things that you do for other people that 10 years from now, 15 years, 20 years from now, could really inure to your benefit. So, by the way, when I talk about my 6 up principles in my book, the first principle is to start up your network by giving first with no thought of getting. So, from Don, I was just trying to be a nice guy, introduce him to some sources of capital. Later, it completely changed my net worth, right? When I became CEO of Fusion.io, we took the company public in June of 2011 from a standing start of essentially 0 in revenues 3 years earlier. Now we're back at the New York Stock Exchange rapping the gavel. It's crazy. Company had a market value of $3.6 billion at its height. Eventually, you know, market went down for Fusion.io, et cetera, but it sold last year for $1.2 billion, right? And so I incorporated all of these principles into building and starting up that company. But first, give with no thought of getting. You know what? It's 10 minutes to 5. I've talked a lot. You're exhausted. You've heard a lot of stories. I want to entertain your questions. Yes, sir.
Can you give us the name of your book one more time?
The name of the book is Up Your Game. Subtitle, 6 Timeless Principles for Networking Your Way to the Top. I'm a big sports fanatic and always about upping my game. And yes,
I just
Yvonne.
want to ask, so I'm a golfer. I was just wondering what your handicap was.
I'm 4 right now.
Whoa.
Yeah. What's your handicap?
We'll talk about it later.
Okay. No, I'm a 4. But I once won the Utah State Senior Golf Championship and represented the state of Utah back at the USGA Senior Amateur. And I was scratch at the time. But And what's funny about that is, you know what? I didn't grow up playing college golf. I mean, I grew up in a little town in Red Lodge, Montana. That's where I went to high school. They didn't have golf courses up there. And so it's just something that I acquired over time. I loved the game. I practiced it, et cetera, and it eventually came together for me. So, yeah. Yes?
So, over your whole long career of doing business, what is the attribute, like the personal attribute that you've had to develop the most that's helped you in your business?
You know, the story, I graduated from law school with Mark. Mark started his own firm. Where did he start initially? In Provo, but was he with another firm?
Yes, he was with a firm that both of the partners became judges.
Okay, and then Mark assumed the role as the lead partner, et cetera. So Mark had a job. Now, I don't know, how did Mark get that job? Do you know?
Yeah, I do. I worked at the law firm.
Bam! My point exactly. Every career move you make starts with a personal relationship, many, many times. When I graduated from law school, I was the least connected person in the universe. I'd gone to law school almost on a whim because I ran into Rex Lee, and he put his arm around me, and he was just this compelling guy, and he said, "Hey, you're going to come to my law school?" Well, geez, I'm graduating political science. I got nothing else to do. I might as well go to law school, right? And so I liked the law, but I can say that I never loved the law. My son is a practicing lawyer in Salt Lake. He loves the law. He loves every aspect of it. Mark loves the law, et cetera, and they're successful at it. You got to love what you're doing, right? And so eventually I was able to morph my way out of the law and become a business person. But it started, and this is the lesson that was hard for me to learn. I graduated from high school, in Red Lodge High School. You can look it up, 40 kids in my graduating class, ridiculously small school in Montana. I come down here, go to BYU, I'm completely intimidated by the experience, but I don't know a single lawyer in the universe. And now I did pretty well in law school. I was in the top 25% of my law school graduating class, et cetera. And everybody had told me, hey, if you get straight A's and you do really well in school, Dylan, you're going to have this golden path laid out for you. Well, that wasn't true in 1976 and 77. I did not have a job. I had 3 kids. I became desperate. My wife had grown up in Southern California. I'd spent some time down there, had family, and we decided we were going to move to Southern California upon law school graduation. So now I head down to Southern California. I send out 50 resumes. I got 3 interviews. They all were a disaster. No one wanted to hire anyone from the BYU Law School. It was a brand new law school, had no reputation, no track record, et cetera. And so I now, 3 kids, et cetera. Now I'm going down an elevator at the corner of Hollywood Boulevard and La Brea in downtown Hollywood, California. And I'd had my 3rd interview, and I'd been rejected again. Now I'm going down the elevator. It stops on the 10th floor. I look out, and I see a sign. It says, law firm, Ersfeld, and Younger. And so something kind of compelled me to step out. And I stepped out, and there was a receptionist there. I shook her hand, and she says, oh, who are you here to meet with? She was thinking I was a customer or client of the firm. And I said, no, I'm here to meet with the hiring partner. And she says, well, let me see if I can find Mr. Waldorf. And so she called up Jim Waldorf, who was in one of the back offices of this law firm. And he was kind. He came out, he met with me, took me back, we hit it off, and he hired me. Sometimes in life, when you don't have a connection, you just have to show up. I had no connections in the world. And so why did I become the human internet and a person that interacts a lot with people, et cetera, and makes connections? It's because of this, right? You got to have a connection. So often it's the connection that's key. That's such a great story, Mary. Thank you for sharing that. Next question.
Do you have any suggestions
A breakthrough value proposition. It's got to be one of those moments where you go, why didn't I think of that before? You'll have that moment in your life, but then it'll quickly pass. And you'll go, oh, I'm not the person to do that, or whatever. But it's kind of that aha moment where you go, why didn't someone else do this, before? HireVue, when it got started, HireVue has this great digital interviewing platform. It's now, as you go out and interview with companies like Domo and Qualtrics, et cetera, they use our digital interviewing platform. They send you a little link and ask you to answer 5 questions. You click on that link and then you're recorded. Your video camera will come up. You'll be centered in the screen. You'll practice your voice. You'll get that right. And then you answer their 5 questions, kind of like a live interview. Tell us about your experience as a customer service representative. Boom. And you've got 30 seconds to read the question and 3 minutes to respond. And so all of that information then is captured from those 5 questions and goes back to the Qualtrics headquarters or the Domo headquarters, and managers there then review your video and they decide, oh, is this person worth coming in and having for a personal interview? Because we've all been in situations in executive leadership where we know in the first 3 seconds, great resume, but wrong fit for this company. And so we're all about eliminating those awkward moments in job interviews. Let's only bring in the candidates that we believe are a cultural fit for what we're trying to do and advance in the company. So it was a real simple idea, right? But it was like, well, and Mark Newman, he was graduating with his master's degree from Westminster College in 2005, roughly. And now he's interviewing for jobs, and he's going, well, why don't we just do this via video? Skype is okay, but it doesn't have a whole rating system or performance or recording. We're Skype on triple steroids. So we go into companies now, we go, why aren't you doing most of your interviews digitally? And they go, oh, why didn't I think of that? Right. Simple, easy, etc. One last question. Yes, sir. Mac, yeah, you got an apple because I like you.
With all that you do in life, how do you maintain balance?
How do you maintain balance? I mentioned Rex Lee earlier, and he was later became president of Brigham Young University. And more importantly, he was the Solicitor General of the United States. Now, most of you people would know what that means. But it is the person, the individual, the single individual that represents the U.S. government, your government, in front of the United States Supreme Court. So when there's litigation going on between the United States government and some entity, we're represented by the Solicitor General. Rex Lee was that guy. I asked Rex one time, how did you do so unbelievably well at the University of Chicago? He finished #1 in his graduating class at the University of Chicago. He had 3 kids, and he had church callings, et cetera, et cetera. He was a very busy man. Sometimes, his response was actually revelatory to me. He says, sometimes in your life, you have to give less attention to one thing than another. Sometimes you just have to go after something. So when he was at the University of Chicago, and he and his wife made a contract or a pact that allowed him to be the first person in the law school every morning and the last one to leave at night. They committed those 3 years where he was just going to do fantastically well, and he did it. Now, did he have balance in his life at that time? Did he do all of his LDS home teaching? Did he do, probably not. He had to give up something good for something great. And so sometimes in life you have to do that. Now, the thing that allows me to have balance in my life, honestly, is the way I've built my network. I have 28,000 people in my personal network. And I have them all categorized. Accountants. If you go and read the book, you'll see I have 90 categories. bankers, accountants, venture capitalists, CEOs, marketing VPs, et cetera, et cetera. And people say, and I'm going to close with this one story. They go, oh, I could never do that. You know, it'd take me forever. 28,000 people, all categorized, et cetera. Let me tell you something. There's a story that I really enjoy, and I don't know how true it is. Someone needs to look this up and see if this is a really true story. Someone told it to me one time, and I repeat it frequently. I don't know it's actually true, but you'll like the story. Okay, so young lady in the beautiful dress, coral color, I guess that would be. So young lady's like this. She's a female bush pilot in the Arctic Circle. And she's flying people into all sorts of dangerous places, etc. She drops off her group. She's now flying out of this place in the Arctic Circle. She's dropped off her people at a lodge or something. She's flying out. The plane loses altitude, crash lands in the Arctic. All she has left is a backpack. Unfortunately, she's not injured, but she has a backpack, she has food, and a map. But her communications equipment is gone, et cetera, et cetera. So she then goes out and has to walk. She looks at her map and finds out it's 600 miles to the nearest outpost. So how is she going to get from there at her airplane to this outpost? She begins to walk. And she walks 600 miles across the frozen tundra to save her life and get there. And she's immediately hospitalized, and reporters come in from all over the world, and they want to know this miraculous story. How in the world did she possibly do that? And her answer was powerful. She was asked by a reporter, how did you walk 600 miles across the frozen tundra to save your life? She said, I didn't walk 600 miles. I walked 1 mile 600 times. I walked 1 mile 600 times. You have to take baby steps. And it's one connection at a time, one category at a time, and it's building that up. You are the smartest, you are the average, I should say, of the 5 people that you surround yourself with. So surround yourself with great people, people that can help elevate your IQ, etc. So if I have a key to my success, it's just by surrounding myself with great people. So thank you very much. It's been great to be with you today.